welcome to Young at Heart. I'm your host, Tammy Murray, the Director of Elder Affairs for the town of Kingston. And today I have a really exciting show, or at least I think it's really exciting. We're going to be talking with someone who I met as he was a volunteer at the center about a year and a half ago, and the trials and tribulations he's had and the successes actually in his life's journey. So without further ado, I want to introduce you all to Bob Shea. Many of you probably already know him.
Hi.
Hi, Bob. How are you today?
Good. I'm doing well.
As people may or may not see at this point, you are in a wheelchair, and you hadn't always been.
No, I developed this condition actually as I was working when I was about 26. It's a rare neurological motor neuron condition. If you're familiar with MS, it's very similar to that. It's called spastic paraplegia, and it's a deterioration of motor neurons in your central nervous system that go right up into your brain. And what it does is it prevents the muscles from moving, and that's what was happening to me. And I didn't find all this out until I went to a neurologist and spent a lot of time in hospitals in Boston, all three of the major hospitals, for many months. And they took a lot of tests and found this disease that I have, which I believe today's date maybe 40 to 50,000 Americans have this disease, so that's how rare it is. And you know, there are some treatments but no cures for it, but I try to do what I can on a daily basis to cope with it. But I was walking for, I believe, 15 years with forearm crutches, and then it progressed just in my legs from my lower extremities down, and it got to a point where I just couldn't really move my legs that much anymore, so I had to go into a wheelchair and try to adjust to that. And so far I'm doing okay. From the waist up, I'm still pretty strong from what I've been doing lately. So.
And that's one of the reasons that I find you to be an inspiration, because you were so old when it happened. It wasn't like it was when you were a kid and you adapted. You were really into your life and doing your thing, and then out of nowhere, suddenly this happens to you. I was 26
years old on my feet 50 to 55 hours a week as a cleaning supervisor for a commercial cleaning company in New Hampshire. And I was driving back and forth from Massachusetts to New Hampshire every day. And that's when it happened. My legs started actually shaking while I was on my feet, and I was losing my balance, and I had no idea what was going on. So,
right. Things that we used to talk about when we first started talking, Bob and I would have lunch together occasionally on Thursdays when you were volunteering at the center, and we were talking a lot about accessibility issues and things that you noticed as you were in a chair. One of the things that I always thought, not funny in my sort of way, was when we were discussing, you know, you can park at a building, you can get into a building, but usually bathroom doors don't have the push button for you to get into. So there were different things like that we had been talking about, and why we originally had discussed you being on the show, which I do want to talk about because I find that really important. But I think the other part that I think is the most cool, so to say, is your bodybuilding and the experiences that you've been having doing that, and suddenly you weren't eating lunch with me anymore because you were drinking weird drinks.
Yeah, I call them kind of weird drinks too, that's okay.
So tell me a little bit about that. How did you get, I'm assuming that you were always going to the gym, but how did you get into the bodybuilding piece? And
I was. It was part of a therapy program. I lifted weights for a long time. When I was like 18 years old, that was the first time I was in a gym. I'm 53 now. And I stopped lifting because things get in the way in life, your work and everything else, and family and stuff. And I stopped working out. And then this happened to me, and I was out of work, and I was so involved with the hospitals. And I got involved about 7 to 8 years ago with Spalding Rehab in Boston. And they have what's called an adaptive sports program. And I heard about it, so I gave them a call. And I went down the hospital, the big one. Well, now it's in Charlestown. It was on the Charles River, right in Boston for many years, and they built a brand new one in Charlestown. But anyways, I went into the program, and I met incredible people there. Between the rehab and the patients and all kinds of people with different disabilities who were doing all kinds of sports in their wheelchairs. It inspired me to do what I'm doing now. I got on I was out on the Charles with a therapist and a woman with one leg, and she was blind. And we did 3 to 4 miles on a hand cycle one day.
It's amazing.
A following week in this program, I would go out and I'd go down the road from the hospital with a couple of therapists, and we played tennis. I'd play tennis in my wheelchair. So it was that in rowing. They do rowing on the Charles River. They get all these different people with mobility impairments. If you can't get into the canoe, that was really kind of weird for me. They were asking me, said, Bob, come on, let's get you out in the canoe sometime. It's a 2-hour therapy program once a week. It's in the spring and the fall. It runs about 5 months. I didn't know about the canoe. 2 of the therapists said, just hang on. One grabbed my legs, the other one grabbed me from behind under my arms, lifted me out of my chair, put me in a canoe with a bunch of other the patients there that were in the program, and we went out onto the Charles for 2 hours, and it was awesome.
That is awesome.
But all that stuff after a while inspired me to start exercising again and working out, so I joined a gym, like less than a year later, and then I moved to Kingston 4 years ago, and I said, you know, I got to start working out again. I remember how I felt. And having a mobility impairment like this, if you're not exercising, whether you do or not, as you're an adult, I believe after 30, you lose 3 to 5% of your body muscle annually. So I think about that, plus what I used to do in the gym, and now I'm doing that again. And physically and mentally, I feel 100% better. And I'm 53 now, and I actually feel stronger than I did when I was 23. And especially when I'm lifting and how I'm working out, but I think it has a lot to do with my diet.
Right.
So,
which of those weird drinks we
I
mentioned?
contacted a promoter back in 2014, and for some reason, because I always advocated towards helping other people and supporting issues with accessibility for people with mobility impairments, I looked at this show on the Cape. It was called The Spirit of America, and they had a number of divisions of all the different people in the show, but they didn't have a wheelchair division. And there were wheelchair bodybuilders all around the country and around the world. So I contacted the promoter, and I talked to him online, and I told him a little bit about myself, and he said, I'm going to put a wheelchair division in, and I'll see you in April. So I did it, and I got there this April. And I did the show, and I just met a tremendous amount of amazing people, along with the promoter, Sean Sullivan, who does this every year.
Right, and you had someone helping you with training for at least a few
weeks
or months?
I met with Shannon Petrolito for a couple of weeks. She had just came back from Vegas this summer. She's the world champion now, figure pro. She won that show. But she had trained me for a couple of weeks. We talked about diet and show prep for a couple of weeks, so that really helped. Before that, I had talked to a couple of other competitive bodybuilders that also train at Anytime Fitness, and I consulted with them.
Yeah.
But I also developed my own routine. When you're in a wheelchair and you're going to do a show, you have to learn how to flex and pose your muscles, and I knew nothing about this. So I got online, and I spent months in front of my computer on YouTube, and I studied and researched wheelchair bodybuilders and regular you know, people with non-mobility impairments. And I watched them, and I studied them, and I developed my own posing style and everything, and that's how I was able to do what I did at that show. And just rolling out there and all tanned up, and you know, I'm like, oh, this is crazy. You know, it was like it was 12 hours. I was there at like 8:45 in the morning down in Mashpee, and I didn't get home till 10 o'clock that night. It was straight out all day. But the event was amazing because I met people from all around the country came to do the show. So I got to meet a lot of people, and it was pretty exciting.
It was exciting to watch. I was watching on Facebook. I'd watch all the
awesome
videos that they posted and the pictures and things like that. And I do remember saying, "Where did you get that tan?" But,
that was from
it's part of the process.
Elite Bronze. There were wonderful people that took care of that, got me tanned up and got me all shiny and everything. I'm like, oh. But it's funny because when I rolled out onto the stage, at first I was like a little nervous, but I thought I didn't feel as nervous as I thought I would be, because when I did go out, I just thought everything that was in my head was all the people I worked with in the gym that helped me train and get ready for this. And I worked so hard for so many months. I said, I just got to do it. And that's what everybody, I talked with a lot of people backstage about it, and they all felt the same way. They were all eating and training the same way for months. So it was very interesting. But the gym itself, Anytime Fitness in Kingston, I had the owner, Jake Pyland, and Dana Reed, and Bradley Smith, their trainers there at that gym. And their support was amazing. And Jake and Dana were actually at the show. They came down to stay and see me do my thing on stage.
It's fantastic.
But it's the members too, that the way they support each other. It's not just because I'm in a cheer. Everybody in the gym helps everybody out, and it's just a great experience. So right now I'm just training and trying to eat as healthy as I can, and maybe hopefully do another show next year.
I hope so, because I do like watching it. It like I said, it's really inspiring to see.
That's great.
I mean, some of us, we go around, we break a nail, and we're like crying for an hour, and the things that you've had to do and put yourself through to get to this point. I mean, take it.
But some things come out of it good when you work hard for it. So that's what you have to do, no matter what you're doing.
And grabbing that moment when you get out there and not letting it go to waste or freezing up or just letting it happen. It's really cool. So if we could shift a little bit to the mobility stuff that we spoke about. You had mentioned that you were pretty passionate about that a few years ago, and you're kind of shifting back into that. I know right before we started talking about doing the show again, you had put something on Facebook on our Kingston Town page about, how grateful you are for the community, and, how these things that you do are able to allow you to live independently and that kind of stuff.
Response, if I can do this, if I can mention it, I drive a vehicle with hand controls, and I've actually had people over the years approach me saying, how do I drive a car? They knew nothing about it. So I have a lot of information on that. So if somebody sees us talking about it, if they know somebody, usually it's a friend or a family member that may have just had an accident and they're unable to walk anymore or something, and they were independent and drive, I have that information. They could contact me maybe through you. I'd be more than happy to talk to them about it. You want me to mention just some of the access?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the things I tried to do. I got involved with the Disabled Student Center when I was in college at UMass, and that's what got me more involved with issues, with disability issues, and especially access and living independently. The Disabled Student Center at UMass was very large, and they asked me if I wanted to be a volunteer when I was a student there, and I said, okay, sure. I mean, I was almost practically working full-time, and I had full course load. And I was working in Charlestown, running back and forth from Boston to Charlestown to home every night. And there was a position open for a reader. They did not have the technology they have now. Today they have MP3. Everything is electronic, so whether you're a student that's blind in college or just somebody who has a seeing or mobility impairment, there's different technologies out there now to use. Then what I did, I was a reader. There were students that were blind, and I would literally go into the Disabled Student Center when I wasn't in class and read chapters in textbooks for the students. And that's what I did. They would read my voice on tape, on an audio cassette, and study. That's how they would study. So that was the start of my involvement with advocacy. And then we get we'd have meetings and talk about public access, and a lot of what we call it's when you can't get into a place of business, it's very frustrating. Whether you're in a wheelchair or not, or you walk with a cane and your muscles are weak up top, you have handicap parking in the place of business, and you pull up, and sometimes there's not even a ramp there, but most of the time there is now. That place of business doesn't have like a power door where you see that button with the handicap logo on it, and you push it and that door opens. that still doesn't exist, and some people really need that.
Yeah.
So that was an issue that we talked about as students, and we actually went out and approached businesses and talked to them about it.
And that was prior to all the new ADA laws that
Yep.
they've put into place. But even
Yeah,
since
the Bush
then, like
did
you
that.
say,
It was-
yeah, there's not every place that's handicap accessible has those extra
I still
features.
see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I won't get off on that, but you had mentioned something about a posting that I did a couple
Yes.
of weeks ago on Facebook, and that was in regards to, I was coming out of the Dollar Tree, and there's no power doors there.
Right.
Those doors are not easy to open, and I've seen people struggle to open them. Me, obviously not a problem, but it's because I'm healthy and strong, but not everybody is. And a woman held the door open for me, and that night, that's when I got on Facebook, and I did that, and I got a little under 400 responses in less than a day.
Yeah.
And all I was doing was expressing how all the times, which I couldn't count, that every time I see somebody out there, I'm transferring in and out of my wheelchair, there was always somebody still saying, if there's anything I can do to help you, just, let me know you need a hand with this or that. And I just had to post something about it, because I just thought it was, just thoughtfulness is so important.
Yeah.
They were just somebody thinking of someone else. And I just see that all around the town, and I was just showing my appreciation.
Yeah,
for
it was awesome to
And everybody
read.
everybody got on there and either commented or popped a little like in there for it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there is that kindness out there, and I think sometimes it's almost like people that don't have any mobility issues or don't know somebody with
That's
them
right.
is hesitant to offer help because they don't want to offend or
That's right.
whatever.
That
But
still
when
exists.
you just treat
Yep.
somebody like you treat everybody else and hold a door open out of kindness, it goes a long way.
What's really great for me is when there's a lady heading into a place of business the same place as me, and I'm holding the door.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, no, because they see you in a wheelchair, they don't really know that, they might think I still might need a little bit of help. It's not a misunderstanding. It's just kind of the norm.
Yeah.
When you have a disability, whether you're in a wheelchair or not. I don't know how to really explain that, but it always feels good to me when they say, oh, no, I'll hold that. No, you don't want to do it. I said, no, I have the door for you. I said, people do this enough for me almost on a daily basis, no problem, because I'm so strong, and it's not a problem. But I can give you an example about access, and if we can, I can mention the ADA for a minute.
Yeah.
The ADA, the adaptive programs that they have and the rules and regulations for businesses, I don't know if a lot of people know about it, but there's a lot of tax write-offs for making a place of business more accessible. If you go down Arcade Crossing, you know where my gym is, right? In Anytime Fitness, it's right next to, the cleaners used to be there. They moved over to Hannaford across the street, I think. No, Stop and Shop, that's where they are. You go in, you pull in, go past Bank of America, the first store is the Dollar Tree, and all the way down. How many businesses do we have there? Probably a dozen, a little less than a dozen. And Anytime is all the way down the end there, right before Kingston Propane. When I go into that gym, I pull in, I park, handicap parking's right here. My gym door's right there. I pull up, I roll up the ramp and into the gym. I have this little key. This gives me access to any of the 2,000 gyms around the country.
Yeah.
I swipe this, a little thing goes beep, beep, beep. It just catches the signal from my key card, and I push a button, and that door opens for me, and it holds for about 10, 15 seconds. Just enough time to get in and out.
Yeah.
There isn't one business in Arcade Crossing that has that. But you know what's outside all those doors that you have to pull open? It's a heavy steel frame glass door in most of those businesses. Handicap parking.
Yeah.
So what I have done to a couple of businesses in the past, I talked to them about it, and I said, if you put the power button in there and you add the motor attached to the front door to make it more accessible for people with mobility impairments. I never say disability that much because I don't like that word.
Yeah.
So I always use mobility impairments. They can get a tax write-off. They'll pay for it and then get it written off on their taxes the following year. And I don't know if a lot of businesses know about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do either.
I talked to a couple and they were shocked.
Yeah, I do know it's a pricey investment. I know that much.
Yeah, but you get your money back.
Right, and then if you get your money back,
It's up
it
to
makes it a little bit better.
$10,000, I think, almost a write-off.
Yeah.
You have to look it up, and you can find that kind of information online.
Yeah, and it was funny because I've known about, you know, I work with seniors, people
Yep.
who have walkers, people who have canes, all that kind of stuff, people in wheelchairs. But it's never something that I sat back and thought about until we had discussed it one day, and how, you know, the door, you know, there is the parking place and there is the door, and the door might be heavier, or it's an older building and it meets the code, but it's not quite up to a great usability, I guess would be the right way to say it. Sort of.
Code is a tricky issue with the ADA. And one of the biggest problems they've had for years, it was great having these meetings with all these other students with mobility impairments that were very independent. A lot of them, like myself, are living on their own.
Yeah.
Code is one thing, but enforcing that code is another. Secondly, when places like you've been to my apartment that's handicapped accessible.
Yeah.
It's all wheelchair accessible. You come into my apartment, in the kitchen, the sink's all cut out, so you have access right under there to the stove and the sink. But not all of it's handicapped accessible. I've been in handicapped apartments that weren't handicapped, but they were up to code. No, they're not. They're not up to code.
Yeah.
And when you have to climb into a tub, for me, that's not what I call up to code.
Right.
So it's kind of complicated, and that's where you, I think, have to get involved with actually the property owners and push aside the political stuff, because that's not, like myself, I've approached a couple of businesses and they made changes on their own. I can give you a perfect example of a rehab. So something, and all I did was express how I felt, and that made a big difference. I didn't have to go to a corporate office to talk to anybody. I went to a rehab. I called them and I wanted to go in. I call it a tune-up because it was really sore. My legs were achy like they get often. And I wanted to go in for physical therapy, and this place wasn't accessible when I got there.
And there were a rehab place?
It was a heavy glass door.
Yeah.
Physical therapy, a big place inside. And it was a heavy glass door. I had to pull open and wheel up this ramp myself, and then I had to pull open another door to get into the office. Now, this is a place they told me that was handicapped and wheelchair accessible. It's not. And when I got in there for my therapy, I got called in for my first therapy session. I could barely get into the room to do my therapy because the whole place was not open up.
Right.
And you need that open up. You need to have, like, aisles or room, whether you're in a wheelchair or a walker or whatever. There was no room. There were a lot of, there were benches and equipment all crammed in, so they were actually moving things out of the way for me so I could get to a bench so a therapist could work on my legs.
Right.
There was no room. And I said, you know, this doesn't seem like accessible, especially along with the cut on my finger from opening the door, and they were really concerned about that.
Yeah.
So I talked to them about it during my first session, and I went back a week and a half later. And when I came in, there was a button on the door. They had an electrician come in, and they said, please push button for service if needed. That was on the door. I pushed that button, and within 5 seconds, somebody was coming out the door and was opening both doors for me. And when I went into the therapy room, the whole place was renovated. This was within a week and a half.
Yeah.
All the benches, the equipment that the patients use, all I can say, I'll use the word, it was all open and accessible. That's all I can say. And there was nothing like that a week and a half ago. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's those are some of the things I've done.
And that's a pretty cheap, easy fix, throwing in a button and moving some furniture around. So it's not always something that's going to take a huge renovation and a lot of money.
It was, and when they laughed when they said, oh, by the way, look it up on with the ADA and see what type of tax write-off you get for the electrician that probably charged you a few $100s to put that little button in there. But they didn't do the power doors. But that's okay. they made it more accessible just by having that button in there. So that just made a big difference right there.
Right, to anybody who uses the establishment, I would imagine.
And I've done that with a couple other businesses too, and all I did was ask. I wasn't all upset, or, you know, I went into a couple of places that weren't accessible, and, you know, so, but that's what I've tried to do in the past. It's been a while because I've been so involved with my training and eating, and so that's all I've been doing lately now.
Just really quickly as we wind down, but you had mentioned eating a couple times, and I mentioned those weird drinks that you drink. So is it a high protein, clean diet? Is that what you were doing to get yourself into that?
Yeah.
Just for people that might need a little energy boost.
Yeah, it's a whey protein drink, and I do that about twice a day. When I'm training for an event, I try to do a little bit more than my body weight in protein, because you lose a bit of protein when you're training and lifting weights really hard. So you want to replace that, but you replenish it. You'll also want to add a little bit more because you're training so intense. And I lost a lot of weight. I was down to 147 pounds for that show. Yeah. I weighed 168 6 months before that. So I was putting in about 200 grams of protein a day. And when you eat clean, that's basically non-processed food. When you eat clean, it's very simple. You just don't eat anything out of a box with a lot of ingredients.
Right.
So, you drink a lot of water.
Unlike how I eat.
And you drink a lot of water.
Yeah, water is very good for you.
Yeah, when
too.
I saw it, I was going to PM you.
Don't be concerned, it'll never change.
I was going to say, I'm not coming to the gym because I'm kind of in the mood for a funny bone. See you in 15 minutes. I was on my way to the senior center.
So I'm hoping, beyond the fact that this is fun to have you on the show today, that we've brought some awareness to some businesses, some people. Like Bob said, if you have somebody in your family that might need some help, contact me at the senior center. I'll get in touch with him. We can try and hook you up the best that we can. But I want to thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you for
and good luck with your future shows.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone for watching again, and we'll see you again soon from Young at Heart.